That's the moment the Party for Socialism and Liberation says was inaudible in the critical incident video showing the police shooting that killed Adam Sykes.
Today we tell Mike Brown and the ruling class that we won't be divided. We've seen these tricks before. Immigrants are not dangerous. Capitalism is.
Welcome to another episode of Naptown People's Radio, a weekly podcast brought to you by the Indianapolis branch of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm your host, Danny Abdullah, who is here with my comrade and co-host, and I guess also my sidekick,
Derek Ford.
We're here to guide you through the pressing issues facing Indianapolis from the perspective of our people, not our oppressors. And as organizers involved in these issues, we're not just talking about the news, we're making it happen. So this week, we have a very special episode for everyone, especially folks in Naptown. As it turns out, several of our members and organizers were near Delaney Hall, the ICE detention center, on Sunday, May 24th, as activists and supporters started to barricade it to prevent removal of a key organizer of a hunger strike on the inside. So immediately, comrades, as well as, others who were there supporting and who had been there for a while, they mobilized to support. So today we're going to hear from Rania Hatab of the Lower Hudson Valley DSA and Rockville Coalition to End the New Jim Crow, as well as Jasmine Moody, who is an ILC volunteer and an organizer with the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign and the New African Freedom Campaign, to get on the ground reporting and discuss how to generalize the lessons we're learning and now to apply to the future. And afterwards, Derek and I are going to rap about it. We're going to talk about how can we apply these lessons that they learned and how can we apply them to not just Naptown, but everywhere. Because that's how we learn. That's how we actually win, right? It's not reinventing the wheel. So I'm excited for that conversation. I'm excited for everyone to hear the interviews because they're amazing. Both of them. So, with that, first, we're going to hear from Rania Hatab and Derek.
Welcome back to Naptown People's Radio. We are honored to be joined by Rania Hatab, a member of the Lower Hudson Valley DSA and the Rockland Coalition to End the New Jim Crow, who has been doing on-the-ground solidarity work at Delaney Hall in New Jersey, which is an ICE detention center. Welcome to the show, Rania.
Thanks so much for having me, Derek. Big fan of the show and of all your work. Happy to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you for all of your work because interestingly, you helped organize Sunday, May 24th, a screening and panel of the new Shaka Shakur documentary. And I was there via Zoom. And I remember towards the end, you announcing that there was some movement happening, I believe at Delaney Hall, and sort of everybody immediately mobilized, and that event was over and it seemed like everybody went to Delaney Hall. So I was wondering if you could fill our listeners in on what exactly, what was happening and what's happened since.
Sure. So a little bit of context prior to that. So Delaney Hall is an ICE detention facility that is operated by Geo Group out of Newark, New Jersey. And they used to be auxiliary for the nearby Essex County Jail. They were shut down for a little while, and they reopened as an ICE detention facility at the beginning of May of last year, and have been pretty much in the business of housing folks that have been kidnapped, essentially working as a concentration camp. People have not seen their day in courts. Charges have not been pressed against them. They've just been illegally held. And this is part of course, as we're all aware, our current administration's crackdown on illegal immigration. I am familiar with a lot of these bigger organizations like Eyes on Ice, ICE out of New Jersey, Pax Christi, First Friends of New Jersey and New York, that have been on the ground there since the facility opened up in May of last year to provide, solidarity, support, be it groceries or babysitting services, legal assistance, things like that for families coming in trying to make sense of what has happened to their family members that have been taken and housed in this facility. Through that kind of work, learning what they're doing and trying to amplify those efforts to our regional efforts in Rockland, where I'm from and where a lot of our comrades are based, we were able to hear from these signal chats and other communication that a letter was released by a lot of the folks detained that, hundreds of them had signed saying that the conditions were terrible inside. They were subjected to slave labor, as we're aware in the carceral system. That's kind of business as usual, but they were putting their foot down and standing in protest and collectively calling for a hunger strike and a labor strike in the facility. And so about 300 of those detained had agreed to begin this. And that took place or began on the previous Friday. That's May 22nd. And then, vigils were happening on the ground there. People were showing up to show their solidarity and know that let our brothers and sisters inside know that we're paying attention. We're supportive of what we're working on and are pushing for their demands. And then on the 24th, that's 2 days later, we heard that there were, the threats of Geo Group employees, of ICE agents, of all of these different facets of the state coming in, trying to transport some of who they believed were the main propagators of the strike, the main organizers, despite the fact that a lot of folks had been working on this for a very long time. And we're trying to do this illegally. People were being transported without, their day in court, without new charges coming up, and just be transported without their families or anyone being aware. And so once we heard from this person, that person, these are trusted comrades, we booked it. And we were there. It was maybe 10 p.m. We live about an hour away, but everybody, like you said, Derek, at the event was aware of this facility, knows a lot of the families, knows a lot of the support needs, and just got there as soon as they could. And when we got there, we didn't know what to expect. Parked here, parked there, got out, tried to see the people that we know. And I would say there were hundreds of people out there, just comrades from across the region, from our area, within Jersey, from nearby New York City. And we were really trying to push back against any transport vans coming out of the facility. People had flashlights with them. They were using their phones. We were really kind of barricading with our bodies, trying to make sure that these vans. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's really quite incredible that, that's a certain act of bravery to stop an ICE van and be like, before you proceed, I need to inspect it.
Yeah, I didn't feel the fear like I thought that I would. I was amping up a lot in my mind, but once we got there and we saw what was at stake, I think we all collectively just locked in, so to speak. And we knew what our risks would be if it was being brutalized, if it was being harmed by these vehicles, if it was being, arrested, whatever it might be. But, it comes in perspective when you realize what folks in detention just a few feet away from you had faced, and folks around the country face in jails and these prison systems all the time. And that it was just this amazing collective understanding of that and agreement to it. Right. And since then, as you've been seeing on the news, if you've been checking on your phone, reading these different articles, the response to these strikes and to the solidarity of folks on the ground with our people going on strike, our freedom fighters, essentially has been horrendous. And, we can't shift focus away from that. Of course, we've been joined by a lot of ICE agents, state troopers. They've been pepper spraying us en masse. They deployed tear gas. They're using batons and committing assaults just really with no cause or recourse to that. They're pushing people into oncoming traffic. The detention center is is located along Doremus Avenue, which is a very active two-way street. There's a lot of 18-wheelers that come through. There are these huge facilities and factories there and sanitation works all along it. So it's always a busy throughway. And a lot of people got hurt. They utilized like state officers coming in. Not they, Governor Mikie Sherrill had kind of pushed them there, saying that was for the protection of the protesters, as we've heard ad nauseum in the past in similar instances. But really, they were essentially there to intimidate people, trample them, get them to clear out.
They didn't feel protected by being maced and ran down?
Right. Just what do we want? What are our demands at that point? No, is unbelievable. And that's just clear evidence of domestic terrorism propagated by like our militaristic state and federal law enforcement. And that became sensationalized, which you can't help that. It's horrible to see and to witness and to be there and to smell it and to be amongst people just trying to make sense and keep each other safe. And also not, retaliate and feel and act out in the anger that might get them in worse trouble. And that's a very, we can't expect that isn't going to be focused on, but it really did divert a lot of attention away from the demands of our sisters and our brothers on strike inside Delaney Hall.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I was going to ask what those demands are.
Yes. So the first of which was an immediate in-person meeting with Governor Mikie Sherrill at Delaney Hall so that she could directly observe the conditions and hear direct testimony from individuals in detention. She had come to the facility several days ago and had said that in like a 40-minute presence, she said that she was turned away. And it seemed that she didn't really do very, very much beyond accept that. And so seeing what her response has been in deploying state troops has been extremely disappointing. And no one is relying on agents of the state to do anything for us. But, we expect very little and we're still let down. And still, that is one of the main immediate demands of the strike. The second of which is the immediate release of the people in detention with vulnerable conditions, be it the elderly, be it the young, folks that are pregnant, and those with serious medical conditions. The third being meaningful review of everyone's immigration cases and their habeas filings. A lot of the times, many of these local judges are seeing, 70 to 80 cases a day. How impactful is review of cases when you're essentially fried? That's not fair to those folks, and it's not fair to those judges. And so that needs to be accommodated. And then an end to what they describe as like coercive pressure to sign deportation or like voluntary departure documents. And then they're not asking for betterment of the situation or the conditions in the facility. It's not for, edible food, which they don't have. It's not for clean facilities, which they don't have. It's not for, an end to the psychological torture under which they find themselves, which is consistent and has been so ever since any of them have moved in. It's for a shutdown of this illegally operating facility that has not filed the proper permits to operate, and that seems to be acting as a rogue agent and given the okay by this conglomerate Geo Group that had made $3 billion last year and operates as a so-called security and rehabilitation company, but is also under investigation in multiple different states and in multiple different countries for similar human rights violations and negligence. And then these incredibly brave people are asking for their own freedom, for their immediate release, and for the facility to shut down, but not for their release and for them to be sent to these different facilities, never to be heard from again. Right. But for this facility and others like it that operate illegally in this way to shut down.
Well, it seems like those are very reasonable demands, and that, given what happened in Minneapolis, very popular demands also. Like the masses can get behind them because they're seeing just how lawless the state is, and it doesn't obey its own laws, And so, I guess what's the status now? You don't have a crystal ball. I don't expect you to have one, but it's really galvanized folks. It seems like more and more people are, paying attention to the story. I don't know if more and more people are showing up. But kind of what's the state right now?
it's difficult. Like today, this morning looked super different from midnight last night. It seems like at about the same time, maybe 9 p.m. every night, the violence kind of amps up. You have federal agents along with, ICE thugs, along with Geo Group employees, kind of really taking out their frustrations with protesters with little recourse. But this morning, more of Doremus Avenue had been blocked off by state troopers. That essentially started a little, further out, it was a smaller portion of that main street that had been blocked off in anticipation of a pro-ICE rally that was going to happen close by to the facility, which just,
That happened.
just another, it did happen. And, some of us that were able to go there yesterday, check in with our folks at the, the solidarity tent. We're able to just watch from afar and also be there because visitation was technically still happening as far as we knew. And so if families were coming in and trying to visit, we didn't really want them to be caught up in this terror that was overtaking. But, Governor Sherrill provided free speech zones. So rest assured, the people were relegated there. A lot of our folks and a lot of the support for our families in detention, they're arming themselves with gas masks, with goggles, with welding gloves, because that's the most protective thing they can do in response to being tear gassed and pepper sprayed and things flying at them and projectiles. And yet the rhetoric had changed to, this is riot gear. These people are ready to start these huge kerfuffles with but we really can't help that. That's kind of the narrative that people want to be happening. And so they'll enable that. And so at the moment, that solidarity tent, which, I want to call back to, it started as just a few really well-meaning active folks on the sidewalk outside. So as people coming in, trying to find their loved one in detention, their sons, their brothers, their mothers, their whomever, were able to meet a friendly face. We're able to get a little bit of support, some understanding of, some sense in the senseless, and be able to be directed into the facility, be allowed to know when their person's unit had visitation and just get that kind of information. And then it got to be this tent. They were able to get more space and people store things in their own, homes and these other facilities. And it's just incredible work to try to be there for families and uplift the needs of people on the inside. Yeah. And the needs of those, their loved ones on the outside. So that tent was under a lot of fire through all of this. And they've been very supportive of these protest efforts and everybody really showing up and showing out for our people on the inside. But of course, they faced that repercussion where people thought that tent was housing riot gear and was housing, these dangerous, whatever tools of terror. But
Antifa.
Yeah, precisely.
Antifa
there are a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And, there's a lot of diapers in there and like non-perishable foods, clothing,
right.
Obviously, what you'd expect from
all the things the state doesn't want them to have.
Precisely. They don't want a sense of normalcy for people. They want to create havoc and then create a lot of folks that don't know how to maneuver themselves and then be able to just remove them in mass. And we're, these brave folks with Eyes on Ice, Ice out in New Jersey, Cosecha, New Jersey Action 21, these different DSA factions, and many, many others that I may forget to mention by name, but that, their efforts can't be overlooked, are working for that not to happen.
Yeah.
But, and so that tent, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm just very appreciative and grateful of these folks. And I want to make sure that their efforts are always amplified and that people are aware. And so, yeah, what was I saying? That the tent had been subject to tear gas yesterday, to pepper spray. And so folks had evacuated from there and they weren't able to get back and check on things this morning, but they'd been, in areas where state police hadn't been blocking off the roadways to collect donation items that people are still bringing through. They're still bringing in groceries for people, still bringing in like grocery cards and toys and diapers, and just, you cannot stop the people. You just can't. In neighboring areas, and we're communicating as securely as we can and being sure that the demands of the strikers are always at the forefront. That's what all these people are working to do and to amplify. We're angry, we're frustrated, we're facing a lot of needless violence, and we reach out for help from these folks that campaign using our money to try to be our reps and tell us that they're our friends, and then when we ask them to fulfill those promises, they let us down every single time.
Yeah.
And so we rely on ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
And and that's really the what's happening at the moment, is just getting an idea of where these donations are going. What can we do? A curfew has been put in place as of last night. They say that it's going to start from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. in, I think, the mile radius around the detention hall. And so we're figuring it out as we go there.
Yeah. I mean, you'll figure out, because it's an attempt to, wait people out, right?
Right.
Sort of die down, because there's, that incredible moment you described when people lose their fear of the authorities. It is just, you can't explain it, and that's when revolutions happen, really. It's sustained the moments of that. And people are like, wait a second,
Absolutely.
We actually can do what they do, we can do to them what they do to us, actually, if there's enough of us, right?
Right.
But the state is very, smart, and it's dealt with insurgencies and, not that I would call it insurgency, but, protests and sustained hunger strikes, et cetera, for a long time. And so it has a lot of tactics, but it seems like, it's an inspiring story. Just it starts off with a few people, which I think this is how these things happen, and then other people, they're joined by other people. And then there's, organizations that come in and they work with the people who've been there since day one to, provide leadership and direction. And, I'm sure that there's a lot of strategizing happening constantly, and that's just how it goes. So it's already been a success in many ways, to me anyway. To me, it sounds like it.
I would agree with that. And I think it's uplifting to the conversation around our carceral system as a whole, how these detention centers operate, really what the end goal is from this reign of terror in, not just this current moment, because as we know, people have been deported and brutalized en masse like this. But I guess it was never a point of pride in previous administrations.
They hit it.
Yes. And no, a lot of strategizing all the time, a lot of shifting of the focus, a lot of understanding what today has brought and how we respond to that. And then when that changes, how to respond to that. It's incredible to witness and be part of, and to see that the democratic process involved in this revolution in the making, you know? And so that's really what is happening at the moment. They're removing known comrades and activists. They have been detaining them, and then ICE is known to operate using these mob tactics where they'll take people, they'll put the fear of God in them, I guess, and then they'll let them out somewhere where they can't really be found. And a lot of effort is made by these jail and support and bail support teams, either remotely or on the ground, to find our comrades, bring them home safe, make sure that they're treated by our medics. If they need further treatment or further evaluation, that they get that. And it's
contradictory.
I fail to have,
it's it's tragic, but it's also inspiring. And, but we all have to start someplace, every struggle, every movement, every revolution, everybody has to have that first experience, and just the fact that this has been sustained now for well over a week, is really impressive. And just like Minneapolis can provide a model that's why we wanted to have you, we're really grateful for you taking the time to, talk to our people about this, because we are also dealing with what they call a speedway slammer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where already several immigrants have died of quote unquote natural causes, right? But we have people on the inside who know it's not the case. So, I just want to thank you for your work, all the organizations that you mentioned, thank them for their work. And keep building these networks, across state lines,
100%.
and eventually we will win.
I believe so too. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on here to just, on this wonderful show, to be able to amplify with your comrades and mine and everyone in between these needs. Would I be able to just restate what those demands are? I every day I'm just looking through all these articles and all these, clips and trying to see my comrades who are working to talk to the press to say, hey, stop focusing just on the violence out here. We got to focus on it in there. And these demands, that's what we're all here to do. We're not here to just,
right.
Get into these altercations for no reason.
Right.
We're being brutalized, but those inside are being brutalized all the time. And what they want, just to restate, is an immediate in-person meeting with Governor Mikie Sherrill at Delaney Hall so that she can observe their conditions and hear testimony from them. The release immediately of our vulnerable folks in detention, including the elderly, pregnant, the youth, and those with serious medical conditions. Meaningful review of immigration cases and habeas filings. An end to coercive pressure to sign deportation or voluntary departure documents. And for the shutdown of Delaney Hall and the freedom of all of those captured and held captive there.
Right. Well,
and if I may, sorry.
No.
A letter was compiled and sent out by folks in detention at Delaney Hall on the 26th. So this was several days after the beginning of these face-offs. And if I could read just a little bit of that, I also don't want to.
Yeah, please do. And if you have a copy, we can put it in the notes.
Sure.
The link to it.
I'll send you that link. 100%. So they signed this May 26th. And it says, we, the detainees of the Delaney Hall detention facility, wish to express our objection to the violation of our rights as immigrant human beings. We, the detainees, are demanding our progressive release based on the fact that our arrests were illegal. Immigrants to this country have the right to await our pending immigration proceedings outside of prison. Therefore, we demand to be released on bond or parole so that we may complete our proceedings. Furthermore, we call for greater efficiency in our judicial processes, as well as greater effectiveness and urgency for those who request and sign their voluntary release. We believe it is unjust to keep people who wish to leave of their own free will in custody for up to 3 months. In addition to the unlawful and forced detention of most of us who find ourselves locked up here, there's the inhumane treatment that all detainees in this facility endure on a daily basis. The company in charge, Geo Group, fails to meet the basic conditions necessary to protect our health and our lives. To their administrative incompetence, we must add the following injustices and irregularities perpetrated by ICE and by Geo Group, including food containing worms or in a state of decay, unresolved issues, particularly regarding bathrooms which are in terrible and inhumane condition, and consistent ventilation problems. Serious health issues, as most people have persistent flu with phlegm that won't go away, and many have conjunctivitis, urinary tract infections, persistent fevers and coughs, and medical care issues. If you're sick, you have to submit a request that takes 2 weeks to be answered, or you never get a response at all. Nurses refuse to treat you right away. They only prescribe Tylenol for all ailments, and the nurse's exact words, "We are not a pharmacy." ICE agents coerce detainees into signing deportation orders. There's no emergency protocol. In cases of falls or attacks, emergency response arrives an hour late. Judges' rulings are highly questionable, with most bond requests being denied without legal basis. Detainees are forced to work, in most cases without pay or for $1 an hour. We appreciate the support of everyone who is protesting outside the facility. We want you to know that you give us the strength and determination to keep going. Please don't give up. We ask all relevant authorities for an urgent response and look forward to hearing from them. With the utmost respect, signed, the detainees at the Delaney Hall facility. God bless you. And that was the latest letter from them.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. And it's always, you don't think there's never enough you can do, but once you hear people on the inside say thank you, you know, you kind of get the sense of that human connection, and no prison wall can break that, you know?
Absolutely. That's why we're there around the clock. There's folks camping out in their cars. There's folks changing shifts, and, you know, we do this for them. That's why we're out here. Yeah. And that's why we'll continue to be out here, despite what the state is trying to do to break our resolve and to break the resolve of those inside. Yeah. It's not going to happen. Nope. They're not going to succeed.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more that we network, you know, the more we strategize, the more that, you know, the bigger those networks get, then that's when we beat them, right? Because they, you know, as powerful, as many, you know, as powerful as they are, there's more of us, you know? So we always say, we're not outnumbered, we're just out organized. And what's happening there is just organization coming into place, right? So, yeah, thank you so much again, Rania, for your work for, you know, I mean, the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign, uplifting that, your work on the ground in Delaney, and sharing these tactics, these stories with our listeners here in Indianapolis and Indiana, because we need to amplify the struggle here as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Comrade, for all you've taught me, all the work you're doing. And like you said, we're just going to continue networking and expanding this.
So we win.
This revolution won't be stopped. Yeah. So.
All right. Thank you so much again, Rania. You're listening to Naptown People's Radio. After a short break, we will be right back. Yeah, we hope you got as much out of that as, you know, we did. Rania and I met just earlier this year and became comrades basically by organizing a documentary screening and panel on Shaka Shakur's new documentary. And it was beautiful because I was on Zoom. I couldn't be there in person. And like, first off, you know, some guy comes up who had done 20 years in prison, and Shaka's online, and he sings this song for him, right? And I was like, man, we got to get that dude's contact. And Jasmine gets right up, and like, I can see her with a clipboard. And then at the end of it, you know, Rania informs us about what's going down, and like everybody just like gets up and bounces, you know?
Yeah.
So the move to action is swift call to action. And we consider, you know, a really great comment and friend. And, you know, so if you're in the lower Hudson Valley, Rockville, Rockland, you know, get up with Rania for sure. And we look forward to building that relationship. And then, yeah, so next I was able to talk with our own comrade, Jasmine, who is down there repping the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign and ILC about, you know, this was really her first sort of heightened, you know, encounter struggle with the forces of the state. So tune in. We're back on Naptown People's Radio. We are honored to be joined by Jasmine Moody, who is a volunteer with the Indianapolis Liberation Center, a member of the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign, as well as a member of the New African Freedom Campaign, which you can check out on Instagram. Welcome to the show, Jasmine.
Hi, it's great to be here.
It's good to have you on. So we are here to talk about an uprising, in a sense, right? A barricading that you are a part of at an ICE detention center in Delaney, New Jersey. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It's correct.
All right. So, yeah, can you talk to me about what happened that night? So that was as we were speaking to Rania, who you spoke with and who you know, at the end of the screening of the Shaka documentary, all of you I saw you all like disperse immediately. And so you went to Delaney, and what happened?
Yeah, sure. And I guess I'll start with the background. There is currently a hunger strike going on at Delaney Hall. We had just finished with the panel discussion for Shaka Shakur. And I had really drawn a parallel between what was happening at Delaney and some of the things that have happened with Shaka, specifically the ability to organize from within detention centers and how that translate outside and their attempt to move prisoners due to their ability to organize within. So when I drew that parallel between Shaka and what was happening at Delaney Hall, and the comrades were speaking about going down, I was all for it. I was kind of excited to be a part of that, to really show up and protest what was happening at that facility. So we got there a little later in the evening. And I was kind of impressed with how everything was set up. They had supply tents there, barricades set up, and those barricades were specifically due to the fact that one of the prisoners that had began the hunger strike, there was threat of him being removed from the facility, and they were attempting to prevent that from happening. I saw a lot that evening. Hundreds of people showed up to protest against what was happening, the conditions that were inside of Delaney Hall, and really just the lack of humanity for the people and what they were going through. I think at one point, an officer had left through the gates, and a lot of the time there were cars, mostly workers coming in and out, that were being blocked. And the purpose for them being blocked was to make sure that, the individual was not being quote unquote smuggled out of the facility. And at one point, an officer came in a bigger vehicle. He came out of the facility, and as the protesters had began to somewhat surround the vehicle, the same way they had done with the previous vehicles, he continued to move just straight forward with people in front of the vehicle. One young man was lodged in between the vehicle and the barricades momentarily until people actually moved the barricades. But it was just astonishing to see that this person had no intention of, slowing down or stopping, was just going to, move straight over protesters. Later in the night, as this continued, police were kind of in and out. At one entrance, ICE agents had pulled up probably about 5 to 7 vehicles. All of the agents hopped out of vehicles, pulled out their, sticks or batons, whatever you want to call them.
Bully clubs.
Pulley clubs. And basically began threatening protesters, telling them to disperse. At that point, things escalated tremendously. I think, you saw a little bit of panic in some instances, obviously with the threat of violence, but at the same time, people stood strong. Everyone linked arms, hold the line sort of situation. And at that point, you could see ICE agents just starting to get a little irritated, telling people, move or we're going to move you. After that point, it got physical. It got physical pretty quickly. Everything from, us being pushed. I was pushed on the ground and then dragged for a little bit of a distance, and then picked up and physically moved by 3 ICE agents. Of another comrade that was with me, she was pepper sprayed and just
Like point blank range.
right in the face. Her and another comrade that had come from the panel discussion, both pepper spray, and it was a lot to watch. Obviously, it's a painful experience, and when you see people that you've developed somewhat of a bond with, it's tough to watch. People being physically harmed, and I've just been keeping an eye on what's been going on there, and things have even more so than what happened that night. Things have escalated, and so I really not being able to be there, as an Indianapolis resident, make sure that my comrades that are there know that they have our support, and if they need anything, let us know, in our thoughts, prayers, and whatever support they need. We as people who have sat with them, conversed with them, exchanged ideas, they have our full support. And I love that the protesters have not missed a step. They've still stood strong. And I think it is a true account of like a lot of the humanity. Those people don't have to be out there. We're talking hours of being out protesting, whether that might not be favorable, especially in the evenings. People are tired, people have jobs, and they still, think about what's going on, beyond themselves. And I just, love seeing, that people have that humanity. So yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear, because we were also talking about how it's a contradictory feeling, because you like there's a kind of mentality that you become more than you are, like when you're with your comrades and you're facing off against this violent force that isn't used to people fighting back against them, and I think it's also interesting to hear how quickly you made the connection between what's happening to Shaka and what's happening to everybody on the inside of this facility.
Absolutely.
And that's something that more and more people are doing. And I think that, Ronnie was like, we just want to uplift the demands. We want to keep it focused on the demands. So we'll be posting those, on our website and sharing those and doing everything we can. And also I was saying, the immigrant rights struggle here, really ebbs and flows, but it's never really gotten that high, and it's not like I want to be maced, right? I do not want to, I don't want you to be dragged ever again, right? But the reality is that, the state is above the law and can do what it wants. And so we have to be smart, but, the more that we strategize and connect across state lines, the stronger that we are, the smarter we are, and we can definitely outwit the state, because they just have force on their side. But
Absolutely.
But that's weak, like if you have to keep people in line by using military force, that's actually a sign of weakness.
Absolutely.
Like we don't have to do that. We don't have like to force each other to, come to a meeting, to fulfill our commitments. We do that out of love. That's power. That's real power, I think,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love that, you say, it's love, because as I said, a lot of these people, they don't have to be out here. That's, humanity, love for the people. And I think being at that demonstration showed me, the power of people when they come together. And I as you mentioned, a lot of, the state, their whole game is physical force, the bullying. And that's what we saw a lot of, simply because they know they can, and there's no repercussion for them to do so. And just seeing, the strength, because people have this love beyond themselves for other people, was amazing.
Yeah.
So I love that you made that point.
Yeah. But it's inspiring for me to hear, because we just get always see the news, and we're taught we're individuals, we're looking out for ourselves, but then you see this and it's like, well, that's actually absolutely not the case at all, right? Yeah. So
Absolutely.
anything else you'd like to add?
That is it. I think that's it for me.
All right. Well, thank you, Jasmine. It's been great having you on the show. I'm sure you'll be on in the future. And keep up the struggle. Keep up the good work.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to joining in again. So thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will be right back after another break. Welcome back to Naptown People's Radio. Once again, I'm joined by my comrade and co-host, to whom I am the sidekick, Danny Abdullah. Yes, both of those interviews are incredibly enlightening, and I think there's a lot to digest on there. One thing I did want to begin with, though, to help ground the conversation is how this has happened in Indianapolis before, not too long ago, in terms of the way that the media totally takes the focus away from the actual violence and puts it onto the, nonviolent responses to the violence. It's like there's this old joke about, they're worried about somebody stealing like potatoes after working hours, right? So he, every day they inspect the wheelbarrow to make sure he doesn't have any potatoes, but really he's stealing the wheelbarrows. So it's like, they put these images on of like sensationalized, like, looting or rioting or whatever, precisely to distract from the underlying systemic, everyday accepted normal violence that causes these eruptions, right?
It was, first off, I mean, I don't even think that's what's happening here, like looting or whatever. But even if it was, right, like that is the voice of the oppressed, right? Like that's not a direct quote from Dr. King, but like that is, I mean, look at the circumstances that people are in. Look at what's happening. Yeah.
Totally justified.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you're tear gassing people for bringing groceries.
And speaking of tear gas, right? I think that's where we return to good old Naptown, because, during the uprisings of 2020, of course, first, what they tried to do was they tried to paint the good protesters from the bad protesters. Yeah. And what they did was, and it was clearly a coordinated act. At a press conference, then IMPD Chief Randall Taylor said there were two protests that happened on Saturday. One of them, like largest demonstrations. One protest happened during daylight, right? And when the protesters were requested to leave, right, it consisted of peaceful people with good intentions who stayed within the system and the confines dictated by the police, right? And then those who refused to leave, that's when the other protests happened. It consisted of violent people and criminals, those who were just out, looking for, to cause trouble, to loot, blah, blah, blah. And they forced the police to deploy tear gas and pepper spray bullets to protect the city. And so in response, we said, yeah, there were two protests Saturday. They differ in terms of intention and peacefulness, but they were not at all the character described by Taylor and being echoed by politicians and the media. One protest was righteous and progressive, drawing thousands downtown who united peacefully, multi-generational, very diverse, people from all walks of life demanding justice for, Drejon Reed, Mikhail Rose, Ashton Lisby, George Floyd. The other protest was reactionary. It drew two main groups of people, police and right-wing vigilantes, and they were primarily white. And so, this was an attempt to scare people from going back out into the streets, right? Which is why we released that. And as it turns out, because that night, the police threw tear gas at us and we threw it right back, right? To protect the kids that were around. And so later on, of course, come to find out that this an independent review panel appointed by the mayor, Howicksett, found that the IMPD's response to the uprisings between May 29th and June 1st, which coincided with the assassination of George Floyd, and also followed the, like murder spree of the IMPD, that basically they confirmed the key facts that we had been saying since that weekend. IMPD used tear gas on peaceful protesters, including children, before any property damage occurred. They arbitrarily declared peaceful and lawful assemblies unlawful to break them up, and that they lied about the reasons for which they illegally seized medical supplies before attacking the protesters. So, that just goes to show you, like, they want you, the media, most media want you focusing on, they listen to the police, they take their cues from the police and their bosses. And so that's why it's so important that we have, people like Rania on this show, why we have this show and independent media to show the real truth and to refocus on what actually matters, which is these people who are like, have been kidnapped and are stuck in this horrendous ICE facility.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a part where Rania, she said, like, the people who were there originally were like there for their families and just trying to make, sense out of the senseless. And I loved that line that she said. I was like, sense out of the senseless. That's a bar. I was like, first off, but that's exactly what people are doing. Like, people are trying to. There was a time where I got interviewed by the Indy Star, and they cut this part out of my interview, but they were asking me about, we were also protesting ICE at the time, and people were like scared, and they were like, what do you say to the people who are scared? And I was like, well, the protesters aren't bringing guns. You know who are bringing guns? The cops. And they cut that out of the interview. I was so sad. I wasn't surprised, but I was like so sad that they cut it out, because I was like, dang, I kind of ate with that one. But like, that's also true.
And it's also like the main point.
Yeah. Like, we are coming with, and in this example, right, people are coming with food. They're coming with diapers. They're coming with medical supplies. They're trying to help and save their loved ones, whether they know them or not. Right, those are our loved ones. And the cops are coming with tear gas, and they're coming with guns, and they're coming with, I can never remember what those things are called, but like those bats, right, where they like...
Bully clubs.
They're called what?
Bully clubs. I mean...
That bully clubs? Of course they're called bully clubs.
I mean, probably not officially.
I'm like, no, that makes sense.
They're peaceful deterrent. Yeah. They're peaceful deterrent promoters. I don't know.
Oh my God. That's another episode. That's something we gotta break down. But Rania and Jasmine talked about it very well in both of their interviews, of like the ways that the state was setting it up to attack them. Even though they were there just to be peaceful, just to like show up for people and let them know that we are trying on the outside to support you as much as we can. And Rania did there was a part in her interview where she talked about the media is focusing on the violence that is happening outside and not focusing on the violence that is happening inside, which is why the people are out there protesting, which is why they are out there trying to get supplies to the families and supporting the families on the outside, because people are being brutalized and harmed on the inside of Delaney Hall.
Yeah, and of course, in response, the first thing that they do is they set up free speech zones.
Yeah, that was so interesting. A free speech zone. This is America.
The land of the free.
Everywhere is a free speech zone.
But only in certain
right
pre-approved.
Right.
You have to apply for a permit to speak freely.
To be free.
All to minimize clashes with the peaceful gun-toting ICE agents and police officers. And so, and Ryan had talked about, we can't place faith on our politicians, and we can get them to do stuff with enough pressure. And, as we're recording this today, which is June 2nd, my 9th anniversary, by the way.
Happy anniversary to Derek and Sarah. Also, Derek just had a birthday. So I want to just throw that out there. Happy birthday.
True. Thank you. According to average life expectancy, I got about 34 years left. So, counting down the years to retirement. So this is just 59 minutes ago. We're recording at 12:47. That the state of New Jersey has filed a lawsuit against a private operator of the Delaney Hall Immigration Detention Facility in Newark, asking a court to grant the state health department access to the center over allegations of inhumane conditions and treatment there, the governor's office said Tuesday. Now, this could be a stall tactic. It is a stall tactic. They don't really care about these people, but Al Jazeera's covering it. It's made international headlines, and they're the ones who made that happen.
Yeah.
The people on the inside who started the hunger strike,
Absolutely.
the people on the outside, people like Rania who are, amplifying it, getting it all over the place because it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
For the U.S. What kind of power is that? And it's the same thing that, ended, formal segregation in schooling. Is that photos of white police officers sicking dogs on black people and hosing them were shown internationally, and people are like, that is a backward ass country.
Yeah. By the way, Ruby Bridges has a TikTok. So just throwing that out there, that wasn't that long ago.
Who is that?
Ruby Bridges.
Oh, okay.
Ruby Bridges, just in case you don't know, Ruby Bridges was a little kindergarten girl who was one of the first people to integrate schools in New Orleans. Yeah. And she has a TikTok. So it was not that long ago. She has a TikTok now.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Danny.
Yeah.
I'll be sure to get back on my TikTok and follow her.
Gotta follow Ruby Bridges. Yes.
Yeah. And then also, I think that, and I said this at least once or twice during each one, we gotta build these networks and share these tactics and strategies because, the immigrant struggle comes in, ebbs and flows in this city and state, and it tends to be more of the lower end than the upper end. And you don't go from 0 to 100 overnight. So we got to be thinking about how we can take people from, where they are at to the next level, doing it consciously, intentionally, never leaving anybody behind. We never lead anybody into danger without a plan. We'd never do that. We never have. So yeah, those are the other things I was thinking about.
We were talking about this yesterday in the party and talking about why we study and lessons that we can learn and even it's never a failure as long as you can learn from it. And we talked about being tested, and this is certainly a test for everyone who is involved. I'm definitely thinking about Jasmine, who, I just started working with Jasmine not that long ago, and oh my God, she's so lovely. She's so lovely. She's so nice. And man, what a hell of a first test. What a hell of a first test. But also I'm thinking about even when it feels I haven't gone through that. I haven't been tested. The fact that Jasmine was able to come back and teach us those lessons. The fact that we are able to have conversations with Rania and other organizers as well. And so we have learned those lessons. We have, and it's not necessarily the same thing because Indianapolis is not Newark. Two very different places, but having that information and hearing from those comrades, hearing from those organizers, we have a better understanding of, okay, what could we do if something like that happened here? What could we do, and how could we build off of that momentum? When Jasmine was talking during her interview, she mentioned how she was able to think about what is happening to ICE detainees and apply it to Shaka. And Shaka has even talked about previously the connection between he himself and other political prisoners and ICE detainees who are also political prisoners, right? Like they are in prison, right? I mean, you can call it detention or whatever you want to call it, but like they are imprisoned for political reasons. And I love that connection just in general, but I especially love that connection coming from Jasmine, coming from Shaka, because so many times the media and people who are ignorant try to separate Black people from immigrants. First off, Black people can be immigrants, but whatever. I guess I don't know if people know that, but Black people can be immigrants. But making that connection, like all of our struggles are connected to one another. There is no such thing as, their problem. Like they're all connected, they're all intertwined. And Shaka was just on hunger strike, right? Like just like
59 years old, like 30-day hunger. Yeah, he's recovered from it now, but and the thing about Shaka too is he says this is not only he says, you think that they're doing this just for us Black New Africans, us political prisoners, the immigrants? No, they're coming for all of us.
Absolutely. Any
working class oppressed exploited person who challenges the state.
Yep.
And so to have that foresight and to have it coming from him, I think we should heed those words very, carry them with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's real out here. Yeah. There's not like a poetic way that I can put that, but like it is real out here. And the more Rania talked about, like it started with just a few people standing outside of Delaney Hall, and then it's grown and it's grown, and now it's international. And it starts with just a couple people who care.
Exactly.
It starts with just a few people who are paying attention and who care. And whether it all impacts us. I was going to say whether it impacts you or not, but it all impacts us. And so this is also a reminder that, even if you feel like you're alone or not many people care, that's not even true, because I guarantee you people care. Certainly people in PSL care. Certainly people on this podcast care. So many people care. Rania cares. Rania is not in the PSL and she cares. And she's out here organizing, right? Like there's so many people who care, and like you can make a difference, right? You gotta get organized. You gotta get like connected.
And that's why we have a liberation center, like we consider ourselves an incubator for groups, to support them, to help them grow and foster and to centralize and collaborate, and centralize our knowledge and our history, our collective memory, so we don't repeat the same mistakes.
Absolutely.
So we don't start over again and again. I really think that, Danny, we can kind of I feel like the Circle City shout outs have been done.
Yeah. I feel like Rania and Jasmine did Circle City shout outs for me this episode. Yeah.
So if anything, just shout outs to both of them, and our comrades who were holding it down, and all the comrades who continue to hold it down. We'll be keeping an eye on this and updating our listeners for sure. So in addition to our regular programming, Circle City Sangha, 9:30 a.m. till 11 a.m. on Saturday, and Emancipatory Motions, Sunday, 6 to 8 p.m. We also have a really killer deal at the store right now where you come in, and if you spend $15 on anything, whether it's a print, art piece, buttons, stickers, literature, you get free 11 by 17 professionally printed design of your choosing. And if you spend $30, then you get 2 prints of your choosing. They're tiered. So, We kept the really dope ones for the $30. But we have just an incredible array, of materials and literature to, to study and to inform ourselves about the struggles, ahead to come, really. These are books that were not written in the future, but they're telling us about our future. We have a lot of lessons to gain from them. So, the store is open Tuesday through Saturday, 12 to 8 p.m. and Sunday, 12 to 6 p.m. So come in, and you can also go to IndieLiberationStore.com to check out the supplies that we do have. And that's it for another episode of Naptown People's Radio. If you enjoyed the show, pass it along, leave a comment, and of course, most importantly, show some love at support.naptownpeoplesradio.com. Remember, the road ahead is long, but we walk it together. Study with your comrades, build with your people, but always remember, theory without action is paralysis, but action without theory is chaos. Once again, I'm your host, Derek Ford, here with my comrade and co-host,
Danny Abdullah.
Stay dangerous, stay disciplined, and stay in the struggle.
We say all power to the people. That means that we are our own liberators. We don't depend on nobody else. We depend on ourselves. And we take responsibility for ourselves. And therefore, we step up for our organization. Those that have proven by their actions and their practice that they represent for us. All power to the people and peace.
Collaboration. Like, we act as if there's a scarcity of rights. If gay people get rights, women can't have rights. But that's not true. A victory for one is a victory for all. A dangerous thing, And
you talk about people being fearless in the face of whoever there is. They don't care. To the Liberation Center, I would say, this is what we need.